I would like to welcome you all very warmly here in this beautiful city of Vienna, Peter Drucker's birthplace. The Global Drucker Forum has its 9th session this year. The Drucker Forum, which lately has also been called the World's Management Forum. Since Peter Drucker's birth in 1909, the world changed a lot, much for the better, some for the worse, and quite a bit towards uncertainty. And right here, in an uncertain world, where new questions about values arise, it becomes clear that my uncle's thoughts are as relevant as ever. I hope we all will take away much over the next 2 days, and I look forward to it. To begin right away, may I introduce Richard Straub. Richard is founder and president of the Drucker Society and founder of this forum. Richard and his wife Ilse, who is also somewhere here, have worked relentlessly, not only over the last year, but also over the last 9 years. Time is very strict today, the timing. However, I think we have a few seconds for an applause for Richard.
Thank you very much, Angelica. And a very warm welcome also from my side to you all here in the room, but also to those who are on the live stream. As you know, we have a live stream going from this event. The Drucker Forum is a non-profit organization, as you will imagine, but even non-profits have to pay their bills. And this is why I would like to start with thanking those who make it possible to run this forum, our sponsors. So, yeah, here, it's hidden here. I was looking for the sponsors, but they are there, okay. So, when we have sponsors, it's not transactional, it's basically strategic partnerships. And in this sense, Scrum Alliance has been, for years now, the top sponsor of the forum. We are happy to have a new platinum sponsor, Brightline, and we have sponsors, gold sponsors like Steelcase, who is not only a sponsor, but also provides us with wonderful furniture that you can see here on stage. And you can see the others, and I would just like to add, the city of Vienna is now, since years, our patron, and that's a wonderful relationship, as some of you have experienced already yesterday at the speaker's reception. The theme of this conference, growth and inclusive prosperity, is a vital one, not just for business, but for society and humanity at large. Just look at the demographics of the world, Africa, major parts of Asia and Latin America. There are big questions whether and how this lofty goal of growth and prosperity can be achieved, and inclusive prosperity above all. Some would be pessimistic and argue in some way almost game is over. Wall Street has won, and the dominance of financial casino type of capitalism versus entrepreneurial capitalism is definitive. And this means the dearth of innovation to create the next wave of industries and jobs. Equally, some would argue that Silicon Valley has won, and that it is now the new normal that a handful of players who are smart business people, no doubt, benefit from network effects and from regulatory vacuums to conquer the world and to gain not only economic power, but political power. And this raises questions for the 21st century democracy and legitimacy of business. And finally, some would argue that the technology tsunami that we experience since many years now, and that is still growing in strength, will eliminate work as we knew it, and thus undo the social fabric that has been built over centuries. All this, ladies and gentlemen, seems to be destiny, new laws of nature with forces that we have unleashed. We, the sorcerer's apprentices, who finally lost control of what we built. At the same time, we remember all too well the dictum that is attributed to Peter Drucker: the best way to predict the future is to create it. Yet, do we still have the power to create the future? And what roles do managers have in this daunting process? Do we have the Drucker had no doubt about the seriousness of the role and responsibility of managers. It's managers who decide about important things. Share buybacks instead of entrepreneurial innovation, who drive the cult of efficiency to absurd levels, who decide obscene compensation packages, who develop business models for new platforms that are designed to break the law. But these same managers also can create wonderful businesses with thousands of jobs. It's not coming from heaven. It's us deciding. Those managers who take their role seriously are not mercenaries and executors who only care about the what, the management ideas, concept, and the how, methods and tools, but they care about the why. The why leads to the bigger questions of society and to the core of our humanity with our human aspirations and values. Drucker had no romantic perspective of management. He was clear about the need of performance and results. However, he always saw this in the context of the bigger why. Ladies and gentlemen, we are blessed with an outstanding group of speakers and chairs to take us through a number of the big questions. Yet, don't expect to get simple answers, but expect to be inspired, to be and better equipped in a way to find your answers. There are no 5 steps, there are no 5-step recipes to growth and inclusive prosperity. Thank you all for joining the forum. Let's enjoy together the coming days, and I wish you a productive and insightful time. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Before we move to our next speaker for this opening session, I hope you all realize that this room here looks very modern, but if you have a glance at the ceiling, you will see old Vienna as part of it. Our next speaker is Lisa Hershman. Lisa is CEO of Scrum Alliance, a globally successful agile working process, not only influencing management, but also learning. And also Scrum is one of our major sponsors. Lisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Angelica, and thank you, Richard, and good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you for this very unique event, the 9th Global Peter Drucker Forum. It's a pleasure to be with you. Scrum Alliance is actually very happy to be part of this event. This is our 5th year as a sponsor, and we're very proud of that. The theme of this year's event could not be more timely. In my role leading Scrum Alliance this year, I have traveled over 230,000 miles across the entire globe. And in every country that I have visited, this question is top of mind. How do we generate growth? And how do we ensure that more people share in its benefits? Mass resentment over an ever steeper climb up the economic ladder is now a powerful force affecting politics, business, and mass self-conception. In the United States, nearly half of young adults now profess a favorable opinion of socialism. Less than a third say that they favor capitalism. These are profound shifts. Recently, we were interviewing one of our Scrum coaches for an in-house research project on agile transformations. He said something remarkable about today's young people. He referred to them as a forcing function for change, because what they have said is that they won't work in bad organizations under poor leadership. On the other end of the spectrum, we have millions of young people who are leaving school without the skills they need to succeed in tomorrow's job market, no matter how bad the companies happen to be. But what's interesting is that where there's that gap, we also have the greatest opportunity, and that's where some of the most exciting work is happening, in institutions and with the people who are actually most resistant to change. External shifts have always occurred more quickly than institutions can internalize them. It's now been 2 decades since Peter Drucker first wrote about the knowledge age, in which the practice of learning and performing tasks by rote were artifacts of a pre-modern era. In the decade following Peter Drucker's remarks, the Agile Manifesto was published, laying out the principles of a new way of working that valued individuals over process, interactions over tools, and responding to change over following a plan. And yet, change is still pending. In a minute, I'm going to show you a video of an amazing transformation taking place in US public education. Established in 2003, Hope High School was founded, and they were created to serve at-risk students, including those with histories of gang involvement and teen parenthood. Most of the students that go to this high school live below the poverty line, and some are going to school while having full-time jobs. I remember speaking to one of the young men that attended the high school, and he said, "Lisa, my parents often encourage me to skip some of my classes to go to my job at a fast food restaurant because I'm responsible for ensuring that the rent is paid." That's a whole different concept than what most students face. By the way, they're called the Hope Diamonds. And I think it's very apt because these students are often under enormous pressure. But we also know that when you add pressure, you can create a beautiful gem. So they were facing a very unique situation, unique challenges from a unique student body. The school's principal, Kristen Sumari, was at her wit's end. She needed to find a way to prepare them for the world after school. So, as she worked with one of our Scrum trainers, Hope High School first brought the practice of Scrum to their teachers. Then, even more powerfully, the teachers introduced the Scrum principles and the framework to the students. In Principal Sumari's words, "To some schools, students like ours don't exist. They don't look at them like they're real students. They don't see the value of who they really are. But with Agile, it allows us to pull those values from them that no one else has been able to see." Hope's transformation has been amazing. In just 3 years, they've gone from being on the verge of closure to being on the cutting edge of self-empowered, student-directed learning. It's very exciting. These were kids that were cast out of society and thought to never materialize to something wonderful. And now we have companies going to recruit these children for jobs. This is our future. As I tell my own staff, my job as CEO is to ensure that they are creating value and being valued. We do that by opening customer data, customer responses to every single person on our team. And in turn, we're investing in mentoring, allowing our organization to experiment, and empowering our staff to make choices. That's the way we invest. And if that follows, and what you're about to see with Hope High School video, growth and inclusive prosperity can't be missed. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the video.
In the beginning, there was so much doubt. There were a lot of questions about, would Scrum really work for our school? Would it really work for our students, for our staff? Is this the right thing, or is this just one more thing that I'm going to be forcing down my teachers' throats, trying to get them to pick up and buy into?
I felt that I resonated highly with this. I could see my students implementing these values, these core values in their everyday life. I've seen kids come up to me and say, Mr. Portillo, I really appreciate the opportunity you've given me to be in this Hope Squad, and I've seen changes personally in their lives.
And when they get a hold of these values, and they get a hold of this framework, and they can self-organize and function on their own without me or a teacher or anyone else, for them, that's freedom. That's real education.
I would never go back. Traditional doesn't work for me. Traditional just means the same old, same old. They're not dealing with the underlying issues with our youth of today.
When I think about where we are today, I know that we made the right decision. I'm thankful that my experiences with Agile and with Scrum have been so positive with my staff, because the buy-in from them has been amazing.
Unfortunately, in the past, we had a lot of mistakes. We're using those mistakes as something we can move forward from.
You don't see educators using Agile. The same training that we gave the staff, we gave to the students, and the students picked it up.
Making these big decisions that will affect them 10, 20 years down the road, it really scares me if we take the traditional route.
Agile has worked here because it is a non-traditional practice in a non-traditional field.
From this successful model, we move on to our next speaker, Jenny Darroch. Jenny is Dean of the Peter Drucker and Masatoshi Ito Graduate School of Management in Claremont, California. Jenny, welcome.
Well, good morning. It's a privilege and pleasure to stand in front of you as the Dean of the Drucker School, or as Angelica rightly said, the Dean of the Peter F. Drucker and Masatoshi Ito Graduate School of Management. I'd like to first thank Richard Straub for inviting me to the conference and giving me the opportunity to join the opening address. So thank you, Richard, and congratulations on the event. Thank you. So I stand before you, as I say, as the Dean, and we're actually celebrating our 30th birthday as the Drucker School. I didn't realize this until recently, but we were called the Drucker School 30 years ago, October 21st, 1987. And our mission is to be a world-class institution for global leaders who want to transform the world. That's code for we have really interesting students who do really interesting things. Our students are defined, if you will, by their interest in leading in a socially responsible and ethical way. And when they transform the world, they do really interesting projects, social justice projects or innovation within organizations. Our students are an eclectic bunch who do great things. To talk to you a little bit more about the school, I need to take you backward to go forward. I joined the school in 2004 from New Zealand, so you're listening to a New Zealand accent in case you're wondering, not Australian, make sure we got that clear. And just a point of clarification, but I've got I can see my good Australian friend already in the audience. I joined in 2004, and as you know, Peter Drucker joined the school in 1971. And I had the privilege of meeting him just a couple of times. At the time he gave his last public address in 2003, and then in 2005 I interviewed him in the year that he passed. So as the Drucker School that carries the Drucker name, our challenge is, what do we do and how do we make sure that we remain relevant to different audiences as time passes? So the first thing we did was we wrote a book called The Drucker Difference, and our faculty got together and each of us wrote a chapter. For me it was about marketing and innovation, but for other people it was about whatever their field was, and linked it back to Peter Drucker principles. So that was a great activity for us, and that lasted for a little while. When I became the dean, we worked on what we believed the principles that embodied, that Peter's work embodied, what they were, and what we should do about them, and how we should propel these principles into our work. So let me give you a very brief summary, because I'm speaking to people who know Peter Drucker's work, but in our world we talk about 5 principles. We talk about Peter's interest in a functioning society. So as many of you know, Peter Drucker wrote about a functioning society back in World War II. He was in Vienna, and you know the European history better than I, and the rise of fascism, and he was watching people suffering without purpose and meaning. And so he looked around him and he observed that without purpose and meaning, there is a lot of dysfunction in society. He also noticed that organizations were a place that we spent a lot of time, and that organizations give people function and meaning and purpose, and that's really why he got involved in management. You know that. Number 2, we believe that management is a liberal art, and this took me a long time to truly understand what it meant, and it wasn't until my good colleague Joe Massarello wrote the book The Lost Art of Management that I truly understood what management as liberal art means. Really, it's a focus on the human condition and leading through people. So with that, at the Drucker School, as many in the audience, we use words like diversity and inclusion and leveraging people's strengths and making sure that all people rise. And this is an important principle that we hold on to very closely. Number 3, we believe in the importance of self-management. And if you can't manage yourself, you can't possibly manage other people. So in our curriculum, we have courses on mindfulness and revitalization, and we spend a lot of time on self-awareness and self-management. Number 4, as Richard mentioned as well, it's not just about people, but it's about performance. So number 4, we focus on performance. And this is where you'll find the literature around Peter Drucker that he wrote about balancing continuity and change, and balancing the long term and the short term, and driving accountability and responsibility right down throughout the organization. So performance matters. And finally, number 5, we believe in looking at transdisciplinarity, which I think is a mouthful to say, but truly what we mean is to solve some of the world's most complex problems, we have to look outside our own boundaries, whether that's discipline boundaries, organizational boundaries, country boundaries. We have to look very broadly to solve some of these very, very complex problems that we see in front of us. So we put all of these together, and these values are infused within the Drucker School. They define our curriculum, they define how I lead the school, and I think my final comment around these values, when I think about them a lot, I feel that with everything we do, we're balancing the long term, the short term, continuity and change, but with these values, we're also balancing a need to serve society and a need to serve ourselves. And what I mean by that, when we look at Japan, Peter Drucker wrote about Japan. He said that was a country that put national interests first, right? Serving the society and making the world a better place first. When I look at America, I think one of our challenges is that we serve ourselves first, and self-interest becomes very important. I think the challenge to all of us in this room as we look to the conference is to find ways to balance serving the world, serving those around us, serving our organization, serving our family, and serving ourselves. So thank you very much.